G'day everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're fishing at Rocklands Reservoir. In today's video I want to provide some tips and techniques that we've been using to catch yellow belly here. The first piece of advice that I'm going to provide to you is we have all the information that we need in the palm of our hands with our phones these days. And a really useful tool that I've used is Google Earth. So what Google Earth allows me to do is go back in time and I can look at when the lake was a little bit lower, water capacity, and what that allowed me to do was sort of break the lake into two sections, I guess. I'm by no means an expert on this lake. I've still got a lot of exploring to do, but this has sort of helped me break down areas to fish. So what I find, I call the top end of the lake up around the wall. It's quite deep up that end. The water clarity is a lot better than what it is down. I call this the bottom end of the lake. So what I found down here is there's a few more shallower flats. I found the water to be obviously shallower, and that's really a key early spring when you're trying to find these yellow belly, because you really need to pay attention to water temperatures, because obviously these fish are going to be pushing up shallower, starting to feed up after winter. So it's really important to focus on the shallow areas of the lake early spring. So once you've identified the areas in the lake that you want to fish, it's important to think about how the fish are feeding at that time of year. So we're talking about spring now, the fish are pushing up into the shallows. So once you've found the shallow areas, you're probably wondering what's next. So what I look for is obviously flats coming off deeper areas. So there are little channels and creeks that run through this lake, and on those flats I'm looking for structure. So it could be rocks, weed beds, spindly trees, timber. Once you've got all those things, you're in the right area, because these fish are predatory fish and they'll hide in these little bits of structure so that they can ambush their prey. At the moment, the key bait source is small redfin. So I'll put in a little photo of just the profile of the redfin that they are eating. So we've been catching a few yellow belly that are spewing up quite a lot. So that's the main food source for them at the moment, and that's what we sort of focus our lures on and our presentations, and that's what really works for us. In this video I'll take you through some of the areas, and I'll show you on the live scope what we're looking at and where the fish are mostly holding. So hopefully that helps you guys out to come out here and find your own areas and break the lake down a little bit better. Start off by going through the tackle that we've been using. We are using quite light gear. My preferred lure of choice at the moment is the jerkbait. These are, I think they're around a 60 or 70 mil. These are a new one, Megabass Shading X. They're a really good lure. They get down to about that 2.5 meters. A couple of the others that I use. Here's another one, that's a Megabass Shading X as well, just a different color. Hopefully you can see that. Slightly bigger profile. Another Megabass X Nanohan. Same thing, they get down to about that 2.5 meters, and they're a suspending lure, which is really good to sit it in front of the yellow belly's face. But what I have been finding at the moment is when you're twitching that lure down to them, once you've got their interest, you can't stop it. You've got to keep it going, and then they'll just inhale it. If you stop that lure, they'll come and have a look, and then they shy away from it. So you've lost that chance effectively. Another good lure that we've been using, small 2.5 to 3 inch soft plastics. That one's a weedless one, which I've rigged with a little stinger, which is very important at this time of year, because those fish early spring will find a lot, they're just nipping at the tail of the lures. Here's another example, that's just a gulp grub, 3 inch soft plastic, once again with the stinger. The way that I rig them, I just put a little bead on there. I loop the braid in half so that I can slip it over the hook like that, and what that bead does, you push it up behind the hook and it will hold that stinger in place. What I was finding, if you don't do that, the stinger will actually get tangled around your main line, and it's a little bit of a pain. So that's been working quite well for me. So one of the rods that I've been using to throw the jerkbaits around is the blade and tails. This one here is a 7-foot model, 4 to 8 pound. I just run 8 pound braid, and I vary the leader depending on the day. So I've been going as low as 4 pound leaders. Don't be afraid to trial things. Sometimes the fish are a little bit more spooky for whatever reason. Could be the weather conditions, too much light, cloudy conditions. So you really have to change your techniques depending on the day to suit the conditions. So you don't need a super expensive outfit. Blade and tails rods, they're really well priced. I'm using a Shimano Stratic. I've run these for a long time, but you don't have to use Shimano or blade and tails. You can just go to your local tackle store and just get a nice light rod that you can use for a number of different techniques. So something that you can throw soft plastics on, something that you can also use for smaller hard bodies like your jerk baits or your crankbaits, whatever you want to use. So that's what we've been using. So when using jerk baits and hard bodies or any soft plastic, another really good product to use is scent. I really push the Dizzy Scent products. They're an awesome product. The reason that we use them is when you are using hard baits, it really gives that lure a little bit extra, I guess, to help with the presence in the water. If a fish comes and he has a go at it and he gets a bit of a taste, I find that they come back more often than not for a second go at it. My favourite scents to use are the UV Yabby and the UV Aniseed. For me, they've been a really good product, so I suggest you go and check them out. Before we go through looking around on the sounder at areas and breaking them down, I just want to go through with you guys a technique that is commonly used when chasing yellow belly, and that is obviously the grubs. I'm just going to grab the fish out of the live well and go through some of the anatomy of the fish to try and help you guys understand why you're placing your lure where on the live scope. There are a lot of good videos out there that do explain it, but I think having the visual might just help you understand a little bit better. So we'll get this fish out. So you would have heard guys talk about keeping the lure on their nose, putting the lure in the pocket, all that sort of stuff. If you're just starting out, probably doesn't make a lot of sense. So what I want to explain here with your lures, I'll just reposition this fish, hope he doesn't kick on me. See this line here? He's going to kick on me. Just get hold of him again. See that line running down the side of the fish there? That's called a lateral line, and that's one of the senses of the fish that they use to move around and sense what's going on in the water. What I want to explain here is when you're using soft plastics, for example, on live scope, if your lure is coming in line with that fish, you're going to spook him. Most of the times you're going to spook that fish. As I just mentioned before, you've heard people talk about the pocket, or you want to keep the lure on the fish's nose. So if you have a look at how the eyes are positioned on the fish, they're on top of the head. So that's where they're chasing most of their food. So the food is sort of sitting on top. When you're live scope fishing, you want to be bringing that lure over the fish's head, down into the pocket, and you want to keep it on his nose for as long as you possibly can. So that's what we're talking about when you hear those techniques mentioned. So that's the pocket there. You cast past the fish and you bring it slowly over their head, down into that pocket, and onto their nose. I'll just put this fish back in the live well. So that's what's been talked about when people say put it on their nose or through that pocket. That's exactly where you want that lure. And you want to keep it as close to them for as long as you possibly can, because that's going to draw a reaction. So keeping it on their nose, the fish is going to follow, and hopefully it eventually commits. I have a lot of people say to me, I found the fish, they followed, but they didn't eat my lure. So a little tip that I use is I'll cast my soft plastic out to that lure, out to that fish, slow roll it over the top of him. Once he's interested in it and he follows it, if he doesn't commit the first time, quickly wind it in, get it back out and repeat the process. Slowly wind it over the top of him. They won't always commit, but what that does is it brings them closer into the boat, and then you can use other techniques like to catch them vertically. So hopefully that helps you guys out.